So let's just talk about gross stuff for a moment. So that idea of slimy and sticky and slippery, or like, if you went into a haunted house, I remember one as a kid, where it's like, oh, you feel the peeled grapes like they're eyeballs, or you're the spaghetti for brains and all that stuff. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's kind of, sure, it's gross, but it also is this weird way of us getting acquainted with our personal innards. No, I'm not going to go around feeling my eyeball or other people's eyeballs, but getting the sense of eyeballs or brains and guts or blood, even, it's actually a form of becoming more embodied, because we're like peeling off the skin, which sounds gross, but peeling off the skin and getting to know our insides a little bit. Same as looking at a skeleton. Oh my gosh. I mean, as dancers, dance teachers, we should love looking at skeletons and getting to know the bones and the inner connections of how that joint works and how that joint works, because that's what's going on. That whole idea of functional anatomy, I mean, that is a cornerstone, a foundation of all the imagery that I do. And I thank Eric Franklin a lot for that. Please check out his work. You will not be sorry if you did. So doing anything spooky, gross into the body is actually really useful. It's an interesting, novel way to get in there. If you just start talking about internal organs at any time of year, it can be useful, but why not do it during Halloween time? Talking about the guts and the gore. I've got a story that I tell students when we're learning about Upstage and Downstage. And I wish I could find the resource that I found it from originally. And I swear I found it, I read it, it made sense to me. I can't find it again, but here's the story. Learning about Upstage, Downstage, and the idea that stages used to tilt, I always ask students if they know why the stage was made to tilt. Most of them talk about things like being able to see taller dancers in the back and all that. And I go, no, because if you think of like ancient Rome and the Colosseum, like they knew to put the audience up higher on steps. They already figured that out. And so we go back to, well, why would they do that? I don't know. What's the reason for a raked stage, and therefore the terms that they really need to know about upstage and downstage? Well, I heard this again, makes sense to me. I hope it's true. But even if it isn't, what's the harm? It teaches them something, and they always will remember it because it's a gross image. And that is that apparently in Shakespearean times, so the Globe Theater, where the aristocrats could buy tickets and be up higher, but all the cheap seats were actually just standing room right at the edge of the stage and all that. So as we know, many of Shakespeare's plays, even though he's got lots of humor, there's a lot of death and gore and killing. And so they would have had their little pouch, of pig's blood or something. They get stabbed and they puncture the thing and start to bleed. Apparently, Shakespeare, the master, thought that what if we just tip the stages every little bit so that the people in the cheap seats, the people, could have a really cool visceral experience. So the pool of blood that happened from the fight scene, the sword pierced the heart and the heroes lying there dying. And instead of a pool of pig's blood just lying there, it would slowly trickle down toward the audience. Wouldn't that be cool? Now, I tell you, when I say that to probably as young as 7, when we're talking about stage directions, they are hanging on every word. You could hear a pin drop when I'm saying, and trickle down towards the stage. It's like telling a campfire ghost story, and they love it. And they will always remember upstage, downstage if it's the blood needed to trickle towards the audience. And I know that they were picturing themselves being the audience watching the slow trickle. Okay, so there's value there.